Welcome back to MetalmanX Builds, and today we're going to be turning this into this. I'm going to show you how you can do it too. So when I started this build off, I had one goal in mind, and that was to make this Gatling gun spin. No other goal, just make the Gatling gun spin. And so that's what we're going to do. So to accomplish this, I'm going to use a craft saw. I'm going to saw apart parts of the kit in order to make an opening so I can fit a motor inside of the shield. Now that that's done, I can test fit the motor to make sure that it fits in the slot provided, and I think I did actually a pretty good job of getting that in there. I will make some modifications a little bit later on to the motor in order to fit everything together, but really pretty good fit on a first pass. Now, as you might suspect, the hardest part of the build was creating a Gatling gun, and trying to fit this 3-volt motor onto this was pretty difficult because we have this peg sticking out. So I had to think about it for just a little bit and decide that the best course of action was to actually cut into the Gatling piece and remove the peg that attaches it. So this is like one of those you can't go back kind of moments. Either this works or it doesn't. So I'm going to pull everything apart and grab out my trusty Dremel tool to cut away the excess plastic, as well as make a smooth surface to fit everything on. Now with a little bit of magic super glue, we are going to be able to attach the motor and give this thing a little test run. Now you notice it's a bit wobbly right there. I ended up redoing this a lot later on in the build to fix it. So we'll come back to the Gatling gun a little bit later in the build. So for now, we're going to focus on getting some of the LED work done. We're going to go ahead and work on the head of the Gouf and install its single LED. Now this is something you've seen me do about 1,000,000 times on this channel, but Zeon style suits are a little bit more limited in how you can put the LED in. So what I've done is I've actually glued the LED into the little mono eye itself. And I'll be running the wires through the little cylinder that allows you to move the mono eye around. The good thing about doing it this way is I will still be able to use the cylinder to move things around inside the head if I want different eye positions later on in the build. I completed assembling the rest of the head of the Gouf, making sure to run the wire through the square hole that connects to the body of the Gouf. To help disperse the light from the mono eye, I scuffed it up with a bit of sanding sponge. Later on, I go back to cover it up with a bit of Tamiya clear smoke. This really helped to dim the light even further so it wasn't blaring in the end product. And this is the way it sat for the next 3 months. Let's talk about burnout. So as many of you guys know, I kind of disappeared from the gunpla community for about 3 months. And it wasn't because I didn't like gunpla anymore, the community, it was because I really needed to have some self-care time. I was burnt out from work, I was burnt out from pushing myself to reach new heights with my building. And I think a lot of us suffer from that in the community. You see these amazing builds, you want to do it, and you push yourself, and you don't necessarily make it. And it's okay to fail. It's also okay to take some self-care time. You know, talk with people, just kind of sit back and observe for a while. I really have to give some props to my friends Oni Mecha and Plamo Fudo, and of course Red Death Squad, who really helped bring the spark back for me so I could get back and build this amazing kit. Okay, so now we're getting back to the Gatling gun. So I decided to go ahead and solder the wires directly to the post instead of utilizing the little legs on there. I think this gave me a much better connection in the end, and it allowed me to practice my solder skills and get a really good connection. So now I'm officially going to mount the motor using a little bit of super glue. So this is going to hold real tight around the motor, but also not really interfere with anything. So now that the motor is glued into place, I'm going to use some accelerator to quicken the curing process so that I can move on to the next steps. So here we have it, the final product of the Gatling gun. And so as you can see, I've run the wiring underneath. Here in just a little bit, we're gonna run that wiring up through the arm so that we can have a good connection inside the body and be able to run the wiring to the battery. So what I've done here is I have created a small gap in this little hand cannon. I forget what it's called, but anyway, I'm going to use the natural opening that flows into the arm to create a path for the wiring to go through. So I went ahead and attached the forearm to the Gatling gun. The amount of space that is in this kit naturally makes it really easy to run wiring through, as opposed to some kits, especially smaller kits. Xeon suits typically have a lot more room inside of them for running wiring, as opposed to the more slim Gundam style suits. And from here on the arms, it's just a very simple process of running the wiring through. Like I said, there was a lot of extra room, so it was easy to run the wiring through the arm and into the chest. So here we are going to go ahead and move on to the other LEDs in the kit. So we're starting with the chest piece right now. It's just a simple white LED, and there's plenty of room in here for me to just slide that in to illuminate the cockpit of the kit. So you can see that right there. Nice orange glow just based off the regular colored clear plastic pieces. In order to run the wiring smoothly throughout the body, I'm going to create several holes that I'm going to be running the wires through. In the end, the goal is that the chest piece is going to contain the majority of the wiring, so that I only have a couple of wires coming out of the back. Moving on to the thrusters on the backpack, I'm going to drill a hole right in the center of the thruster, and then I'm going to run the LED through there. So we'll get a nice effect once the LED is fully seated and turned on. For creating the second thruster, all you need to do is repeat those same steps and test it out. A little thing I like to do is to grab my tweezers and adjust the LED just a little bit Now you can break an LED doing this, so be very careful with this. This is something that I do, but if you are concerned that you might break it, just take a little extra time and care. So here we're going to play a really fun game called Don't Break the Wire. I've done that before and it drives you nuts. Always make sure you're checking your wiring and your lights as you go. But I had a lot of wires I had to get into the backpack here because I combined the thrusters, I combined the chest piece, I combined the head all into one. So we had to be able to smoothly run those wires throughout the body, as well as keep the wires to a minimum, because in the end we're going to run all these wires out to the leg instead of having it running under the skirt. For the feet thrusters, we're going to follow the same principles that we did for the upper thrusters on the backpack, and we're just going to simply drill a hole right in the middle of it and run an LED into it. I really like these thrusters. I wish I was able to show them off a bit more in the final build because they really do shine outwards very well. The cone shape works really good for this. So here we're going to use a little bit of fire and some shrink tubing to make sure that the connections are nice and secure. On any kit, running wiring through the legs is going to create a particular challenge for you because you have two options. Either you want to keep it mobile so you can pose it later, or you build it in its place. My philosophy is that I like to keep it mobile so I can move it around and things like that. But you have to make sure that you are avoiding pinch points. Running wiring through the legs can be one of the most devastating parts of a build because it's very easy to hit a pinch point because they're designed to have articulation. So with this kit, it did require quite a bit of cutting and drilling, but in the end, I was able to pull it off. Now you'll notice this has one long wire. It's actually going to be wrapping back up inside of the kit. So as I build in here, I'm trying to keep in mind that, okay, I need this wire to run through the hip and back out the other side. So you'll see all the wiring has been placed outside the hip skirt on the right leg. All three major wires, and this is just a simple process of following the design and allowing the wires to run through drilling and putting things in as we go. So we're attaching the final piece and we're on to the base. Before we start on the base, we are going to add a few more minor details, some metal parts on the arms and in the Gatling, as well as some water slide decals. I know I wanted to be able to control the electricity to the gun, so I'm adding what's called the potentiometer to the base. This will allow me to turn up and down the amount of electricity running through. I also added a switch that I can turn the gun off by itself. So I'm going to wire up the base using my soldering iron, making sure that I am using shrink tubing as I go to make sure there are no shorts. So to make the crust of the base, I'm going to make custard, made famous by Bill making stuff. It's a combination of sand, Mod Podge, and paint. You mix it up real nice and it gets this nasty little texture, but it works really great. So I ended up spreading it out a lot with my fingers. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but basically I was able to use it to make a pretty cool texture, including big boulder rocks. I used some of the dried crusted to make tinier rocks, and then I painted those rocks with gray. Followed it up but with some oil washes as well as some good old dry brushing. Using some basic PVA school glue, I was able to put on some flocking and sealed it in with a bit more watered down PVA glue, and it was time to call this build done. So before we wrap up today's video, if you've liked what you've seen today, please make sure you like and subscribe. If you just came to this part of the video to see the end of it, go back, take a look. I'll show you how I did it. So with that said, thank you very much, and no more goofing around. Let's get to those shots.